Trevor, welcome to first edition of Doyle-Cast.
Thanks, Doyle. Glad to be your guinea pig.
Well, thank you very much. So we drove down today, set up some equipment,
Right?
and I have not seen you in quite some time, and it's great that I'm seeing you.
Right.
And I think a lot of people would be interested in some of your story,
Okay.
maybe all of it.
Maybe all of my story. Okay.
Maybe all of it. So let me back up. The first time we met,
Mm-hmm.
you were sitting in the back of a truck with some beer. Go figure.
Yeah.
It was in Clovis, New Mexico.
Correct.
And you guys were fixing to go up and watch some trade show TV.
It was public access auction that we are big fans of in Clovis. Anytime we had to go to Clovis, that was the one big thing that we could look forward to, was this public access auction that was on TV. And the auctioneer was truly terrible at his job. He couldn't get any words out, and he would show, here's an item, and this is a desk, and there's a scratch here. Doors open, and but a little scratch. That's it. That's all. And then he'd move on to another thing. And so we just stumbled upon it one night after drinking beer in the parking lot. That's what you do in Clovis. You drink beer out the back of a pickup in a parking lot. So we fell in love with this show and how truly terrible it was. So I said, I'm going to have to get something from this show.
Before you go into the rest of the story on what you bought.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first time to Clovis. And I was actually sent down to evaluate you guys.
Right.
And my first meeting with the project manager was in a parking lot, carrying a case of beer in the watch public access.
Right.
Really bad TV.
Yeah, it's like, hey, nice to meet you. I really got to get going. There's this auction that's about to come on.
So you invited me up, and I said, no, maybe not this time. Maybe next time.
Right.
And I've regretted it for going on 15 years now that I did not go up and watch, because the next morning I was informed on what you bought.
Yes.
And there were two items.
Uh-huh.
First item being a crossbow.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pretty darn jealous that you bought a crossbow on public access TV.
$40. I overpaid for it.
And we still haven't shot it.
Right.
Maybe we can fix that tonight.
Yeah.
And number two, I was informed that you bought a 3-pack, 6-pack of granny panties.
Well, you're on the right track. Unfortunately, I was outbid for these granny panties.
No. Oh, no.
I called it. It was actually 40 granny panties. And I said, you've got Christmas and birthdays coming up. I've got sisters and my mom and grandma. This would be perfect, but I'm not going to go over $4.
No.
And I was the lead bid for a long time, but I lost out. I think the lucky winner got it for $6. So I just can't do it.
So I'm envisioning a 65, 70-year-old lady sitting in front of her TV on her phone, waiting to the last minute to outbid you for a 40-pack
Yes.
of panties.
She was set for life.
Fantastic. Well, that's how we met.
Mm-hmm. You were the heavy, by the way.
Yeah,
I should say that. You were the heavy.
I was sent down for nefarious reasons, and it all turned out great, and we'll talk to Justin later, and we'll figure out why that all turned out great. It was no thanks to you, of course.
No, not at all.
So instantly endeared you to me. We sat, we talked, we got to know each other over time. Things worked out work-wise, and we got to be friends, and then I started learning more about your story.
Mm-hmm.
And when I learned more, I was more and more intrigued, and we had some great conversations about your time in L.A.
Yeah.
So maybe you back up a little bit and tell me a little bit about how it was that you went from Las Cruces, New Mexico to L.A., and then kind of jump into what you did while you were in L.A.
Okay. Well, I always harbored a dream of being an actor and a writer as I was growing up. And specifically, I always wanted to be on Saturday Night Live.
Okay.
That was my real dream. But I never imagined myself moving to L.A. because one of the big things was I wasn't ever going to go out there and just flail away without a plan. And then in the mid-'90s, I was watching a Larry King interview with Lisa Kudrow, and of course she was in the middle of the Friends phenomena that was going on, and he talked about her history, and she brought up that she was in the Groundlings in L.A., and she said it was, a sketch comedy improv school where a lot of great people came from, a lot of great SNL comedians came from the Groundlings, and I sat up and went, whoa, and of course this is the mid 90s, so the internet was in just its nascent phase, really. Okay. And I had just discovered how to use the internet. I remember going to the university computer lab and a friend of mine showing me. He goes, yeah, it's great. Whenever the letters are in blue, then you just click on it and it takes you to another page for more information. I'm like, this is incredible.
Fantastic.
This is like a living encyclopedia.
Right.
So I wrote down on a piece of paper, look up the Groundlings, Hollywood, California. And I did, and of course I didn't have a web presence at all. I just found it like literally on an online white pages.
So you literally went to the phone book, and looked up,
except on the internet, because this was the mid '90s, so you had to do everything that you could on the internet.
All right, I got you.
But yeah, no. So I looked up their information, and I just wrote it down. And the fact that I had to call them. Because even at that point in the mid 90s, I was like, I'd much rather email, but no, I had to call for information. And so,
well, that was a long distance call then.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is back when I remember Sprint would have commercials for like 10 cents a minute for long distance calls. Whoa, that's amazing. I could talk for an hour and only spend $6.
Right.
Never mind the fact that I was bouncing pre-dated checks for $5 to a pizza joint at the time in my life. But so I finally called the Groundlings and got the information, and they actually sent me a little pamphlet, and I just kind of sat on it for a little while. And then finally in 1998, I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go out to LA with a friend of mine and see the Groundlings and actually see them in action, see if I think this is something I could do.
Now, to pause you for a second, had you done high school, college acting?
Oh yeah. I was a
open
theater
mics.
I was a theater major in college at the time. I didn't do open mics or anything like that, but I was very much involved in the theater community, but it didn't speak to what I really wanted to do, which was comedy. And the Groundlings seemed like something that could be what I wanted to do because it spoke directly to sketch comedy and improv. So 1998, go out with a friend. And that journey was pretty incredible too, just getting there to begin with, because the car almost broke down in Tucson. And then I decided, well, let's go to Vegas instead of LA, because I just spent a lot of money getting the car fixed. And then, of course, I blew all my money in Vegas and had my parents wire me money, college life. But then we finally did make it to LA. And then, sorry about that. So we finally made it to LA, and we went to the Sunday Company show, which is actually the level before you finally make it into the main Groundlings thing. Okay. Right? So went and saw the Sunday Company, and I was like, oh, yeah, I could do this. I could definitely do this. So, again, I sat on it for quite a few months. And then, my life in Cruces wasn't, I could tell it wasn't really going to go the way I wanted it to go. So I just went ahead and dropped out of college, and then I called up the Groundlings and scheduled an audition and went out there. I remember it was 2 days before April Fool's Day in 1999, because you could just go ahead and start the school at a pre-level, but if you actually wanted to get into the school, you had to audition. And if they liked you, then they'd start you at level 1. Because back then they had 4 levels. It might be a little more complicated.
So was there a charge for the preschool?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, but that'd be like 6 weeks out of your life. And I'm like, if I could just audition my way into this, then I'll do that. So a couple of buddies went with me to LA, and they waited at Johnny Rockets down the street on Melrose. And I walked in there and I did the audition, and I mean, it went fantastic. What the audition was basically a mini version of your first day of class. And it ended with what they called, I think it was called a turnaround or something like that, where they give you a phrase, which is basically, hello, I'm, and then they give you something, and then you turn around, and you have to begin a monologue with hello, I'm, whatever they say, go through a whole monologue, like 30 seconds or a minute, and then end it with the same phrase. So they gave me, hello, I'm a fraternity pledge master or something, or fraternity president or something like that.
Okay.
And as soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, I'm going to kill this. So I did, and I think one line I had in there was like, it's going to be great. We're going to have lots of keggers. We're going to have lots of fundraisers. We're going to have lots of fundraisers for keggers. And so,
Do you think does that exist on tape anywhere?
No, unfortunately. Okay. But that was, I think, a Tuesday or Wednesday. And then my friends and I went to Disneyland, and because they said, call on Thursday, which was April 1st, when April Fool's Day. So I called, from Disneyland to the Groundlings. Of course, I didn't have a cell phone back then.
You're doing everything right.
Yeah, exactly. So I called them, put in a quarter in a payphone at Disneyland and called. They're like, oh, yeah, you made it into level 1. That was easy. No problem. So
nice.
There you go. And then I sat on that still for another month and a half or something like that. And I finally moved out at the end of May.
So you could go in anytime you wanted. There wasn't like
I had up to a year from acceptance to go. Yeah.
All very, for most people, completely terrifying.
Sure.
I've had some experiences in my life where I did the same thing. I dropped out of school, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. My friend got me a job with the airline, and I, within a year, put in for a transfer and moved from Detroit, Michigan to Reno, Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a going away party for me, and I still remember a young lady at that party that I went to school with, and she said, I wish I had the guts to move.
Yeah.
And it didn't compute to me, and I'm guessing it doesn't you either, really. No. What are you talking about? She's like, well, I couldn't move away from my family. I couldn't move away from my town. I'm like, are you insane? Get out of here. So you got out there to L.A., and then did you have a bankroll? Were you just going to show up and crash on a couch? What was your plan there?
I was very fortunate. I had a grandmother who was very generous, and she helped all her grandchildren. She would typically help them with their down payment for a house, for instance, or to help them with other things they were doing, like business-wise or something like that. And I do actually look back at that time, the chutzpah I had, because I called her up. I said, Grandma, I've decided I'm going to move to L.A., and I need you to help me. And she did.
Is she from L.A. or?
No, she was very supportive and believed in me. And I don't know really where that came from in me to have that kind of audacity to call her, because basically what I was saying was, I need you to pay my rent while I'm there. And she did.
Is she here in Las Cruces?
She was in Deming at the time. She's no longer with us. She passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she was a phenomenal woman. In fact, just the other day I was writing out a little business plan for my current job, and I wrote there, thank Grandma Gladys, because not thank, I definitely am thankful for her, but think like Grandma Gladys, act like Grandma Gladys, because she was a business owner, a woman business owner, growing up like in the 50s and the 60s. I mean, she wasn't grown up, and she was grown up, but Understood. She owned business in the 50s and the 60s as a woman. I mean, she didn't take any guff off of anyone.
Nope. Couldn't.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I called up Grandma, and I was like, I really want to do this. I have this opportunity, and it's a legitimate, like, stepped opportunity that I could do. It's a real plan. It's not just me going out and flailing away. I was working at Red Lobster at the time. I was like, I've already talked to them, and they've agreed that they'll transfer me over. So I already got a job lined up.
Okay. I've
got this lined up. Tracy and Justin are just down the road in Lake Elsinore, and I could stay with them for as long as they're there, which ended up only being 30 days, but it still worked out. So yeah, she goes, okay. And she agreed to it. And not only that, she paid off the credit card debt I had at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. It was, not everybody has that,
no,
and, without that, I like to think that I would have done it anyway, but I wouldn't have had as good of a life as I did there.
The experience, right? Yeah. Having to worry about where your next meal or where you're going to sleep.
Right, exactly. I mean, I did have a little bit set up, just in that I did have at least smart enough of a plan that I had a job lined up. And really, I could have probably paid my own way with that, but I couldn't have done much else.
Yeah, 9 roommates in a
Yeah, exactly.
800 square foot apartment.
Yeah, so I ended up in a bungalow in Culver City,
Nice.
that my mom found, so I'm like working all the time, and my mom was out there for a month. So was grandma, because I wrecked her Cadillac while we were out there. So she got stuck there. But yeah, so I'm like working, and mom's calling around to apartments looking for me, and I was too, but she found a place in Culver City, and I went there. I'd never even heard of Culver City, and I was like, this is great. This is amazing.
All right, so now you've made the jump.
Mm-hmm.
You're out in LA. You go to your first class.
I actually missed my first class.
Another thing done right.
Right.
Vegas, broken car.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was pretty confident. I was like, I know how to get there. And I didn't. I ended up at the ocean instead. I was like, oh, I'm here for all of this. And, but so I made it to the second class. And when I did, I was like, I'm so sorry I missed the first class. And they're like, yeah, just don't miss again. And so anyway, they start, you do warm ups and everything. And then anytime you start doing a game or an improv, or the teacher's instructing, Amy von Freiman was her name. She asked for volunteers. So I was like, sat there and I thought, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I said I want to do. So I jumped up and I would just volunteer, and I'd get right into it, man.
Good for you.
And I think it was the second class that I was actually in. I remember we were taking a break, so we all went downstairs because we were in a building next door to the Groundlings upstairs on the second floor. So we were taking a break, so we all went downstairs because in the Groundlings theater was a water fountain. And so I was there getting a drink of water, and this guy Bob comes up to me. He's a friend for my life right now, actually. I've known him since then, and in fact just the other day I was talking to him. So he walked up to me. He goes, hey, I just wanted to talk. Yeah, I think you're doing really great and everything. I was like, oh, thanks a lot, Bob. And then Amy was outside smoking, and she goes, hey, Trevor, Bob, come out here. And so we do, and she goes, so, Trevor, what's your background? What's your history? Have you done anything like this before, like in improv before? And I said, yeah, when I've, forgotten lines on stage in college, and then I just had to make something up to get back to a line. She goes, because, God, you're doing great. It's like you're a natural. It's just incredible. And Bob's sitting there. He's like, yeah, right on. And then he's like waiting for her to say something to him because she called us both out. She's like, all right, I'll see you guys upstairs. So that forever made her hate, or that forever made him hate her and the Groundlings. But that forever, like, emboldened something in me.
Absolutely.
And hearing that, especially like the second day at class after missing the first day of class, I mean.
So how long is this experience? Do you start getting work from this? Do you do 6 weeks a year?
I think each class was like 6 weeks, right? So then after you finish a class, they either decide that you're going to move up, or you're going to have to repeat, or you're out of the program entirely. You're just a lost cause.
Okay.
So it's basically a really long audition process.
Sure.
Really. So I had that level 1 and did great. And then level 2, that was a great experience again. And so then they're like, okay, level 3 is lab, where basically you'll be working as a class for an entire, I think 3 months, maybe more than that, on a show where an invited show. So okay. You invite guests, but you're actually performing at the Groundlings Theater. So I was really pumped to get that, but it was like the summer of '99 that I finished level 2, and then you're on a waiting list. So it was winter of 2001 when I finally got to start the level 3 lab.
So you almost had a 2-year wait.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I started doing a class at CBS called CBS Comedy on the Lot, which was all centered around doing a performance for industry professionals, talent managers and agents and everything. And that was a great experience too, because I talked my way into their advanced level, because I was like, I just want to do this once and do the show so I can get an agent. So that was like summer of 2000. And again, I just had some chutzpah every now and then.
Sure.
And so it worked out well. And I remember my oldest sister and her family were in town, and we spent the day that I had before the show at the beach at Laguna Niguel, right? And so then I had to go leave there and go back to Culver City and change, and then go out to the valley to Studio City to do this show. And traffic was backed up. It was a nightmare because my whole plan was I left with plenty of time, that I was like going to take a shower, maybe take a nap, mentally prepare. I could not get back to my bungalow.
Uh-oh.
So it was just an absolute nightmare. And I'm mad and I'm angry and everything. I got back, was able to change, and then drove out to the valley, and I'm exhausted. And I show up, they've already done their warm-ups and everything, and now they're just waiting for show to start. Like, where's Trev, and so I finally like show up, and I'm sunburned and everything. and this girl that was in the class, Poppy, she looked at me, she goes, oh my gosh. And she goes, I think this is actually going to work for you because you look like you just do not care at all. And so we went out, and I don't know if they did their warm-ups for the actual audience or not, but I remember going out and starting the show, and Poppy was right. I mean, I just killed, and I ended up getting an agent from that. So yeah, because the way that it worked was, they gave you a list of all the agents that were there, so you just kind of call, and at that point in my life, still, I really hated calling people. But one little boutique agency, actually a couple of them, they were like, oh yeah, we have you earmarked. Do you have your SAG card? Are you union? I'm like, no, I'm not. So one person was like, oh, then we can't represent you because we're theatrical only, which theatrical agent is actually movies. So, but this one boutique agency, they're like, well, we do commercial and theatrical. So what we'll do is, if we see an opportunity that we think you can audition for something, we'll send you out for a commercial. And if you do well, then we'll sign you. I was like, okay. So it was basically working on spec. And so they found an audition that they thought would work for me, which was for Animal Planet. So I went there, my first time doing like a real audition, like, here's my representation and my headshot, and this is a big deal. And it was a completely silent audition. I just had to act like these animals were running into me as I was trying to take a TV dinner to watch TV. But I had the cameraman laughing. And I was like, that's got to be a good sign. So I ended up getting a callback on my very first audition. So when I got that, then the agency called. They're like, yeah, you got a callback on your first audition. We're going to go ahead and sign you. So
wow.
I went out for a lot of things. I was on avail for 2 things. One would have filmed in Australia, and another one was, I forgot what, but yeah, it really looked like it was going to break any day, but I didn't have, I forgot that was it. It was DirecTV, because I remember I went to the callback, did my thing, came out, and I was just saying bye, because you get to know everybody, of course.
Right.
You're all end up on the same auditions all the time. So I'm like, oh, see you guys next time, blah, blah, blah. And then the director pokes his head, I was like, hey, Trevor, hang around for a sec. I was like, all right. And then this guy comes out and goes, all right, it's one of you 2 guys, because they're not even reading for that role anymore. I was like, oh, this is it. This is finally it. And once again, it was the other guy. And so I never did land it. But I remember talking to my agent. I was like, should I just sign up for extra work? Because you could get credits to finally get your SAG cards. They're like, no, eventually what's going to happen is someone's going to want you, and they'll Taft-Hartley you. And to Taft-Hartley means they just automatically put you in the union.
Right.
But it wasn't happening. But so all this is going on while I'm in LA, and this is all 2001, and things are going well. I'm in a couple of different theater troupes and an improv troupe, and I'm performing a lot. And I'm waiting for Groundlings level 4 at that point, because I finally did get to do my level 3 show, and it was killer. It did great again.
So meanwhile, let me ask you, you see all the same folks, you're in the same groups. Are there people kind of catapulting out of there and landing on shows and movies, or?
Not then. Not at that time.
Okay.
No. You might, I had a circle of friends, of course, and like one guy actually got a McDonald's commercial, went and filmed it and did everything, told us about the experience. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, McDonald's is a big deal. You make a lot of money, because
it plays
that's
everywhere.
a national commercial.
Gotcha.
That makes some money. But his commercial never aired. So he got his initial fee, when he got hired, but then for some reason it didn't air. But I remember like finding out about the McGriddles, the McDonald's McGriddles, because I went in to read for a commercial for that. I was like, this is amazing. You're taking a pancake and making a sandwich out of it. So that was the cool stuff. But every now and then a friend of yours might get a gig or something like that, but nothing huge. That would come later though. So it was just a neat experience in that way, because you're seeing people, you're getting to know them and everything, and casting directors are getting used to seeing you too, and again I learned if you could make the people behind the scenes laugh on your initial audition, you were going to get a callback. So I don't know, I was on dozens of auditions and I got callbacks to every single one except like 2. And both of those I knew I wasn't going to get the callback because I was like not on my game that day. But what was neat about commercial auditioning was a lot of it was just improv, and that's what I was training for.
Right.
So I mean, I never had any worries about it. Like I was like, yeah, I can do whatever. What do you want me to do? Okay, I'll do that.
So you always felt like it's just around the corner, just getting ready to happen.
Yeah. And then because I kept telling him, like I said, I was like, I can do whatever I need to do to join the union because I feel like I'll get jobs faster. No, wait, just wait. So finally what happened was my agent, she was moving on. So her assistant was taking over for her. She called me in and she said, we're going to go ahead and start representing you theatrically and just sending you out. I was like, okay, I'm still not in the union. She's like, we're going to send you out anyway. But at that point, I had already decided I was going to move home because, again, this is 2001, so 9/11 happened. And at that point, with all the progress and momentum that I had, it was, just a week or two after 9/11 happened, I came back home that very day. And I was like, I think I just want to go home. I just want to be around my family. I don't want to be here anymore. But the plan was, I didn't tell anybody that I was going to do that. So I told her, yeah, represent me theatrically. So my whole plan was I was going to move back to Cruces, and I was going to still take calls from my agent because it was usually like a day in advance at least that you would get an audition. Sometimes it would be the same day. And I'd just say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have to work today, or I can't get out of work. But if it was like at least a day in advance, I was like, I'll go do it. This will work out perfectly. But at that point, I was broke and I couldn't pay my cell phone bill anymore. And it finally got turned off for long enough that I lost my number. And then I was like, out of the game.
Wow. Any regrets?
No. Well, it sounds like I was out of the game entirely at that point. Because I said I was. I was out of that game with the representation.
Gotcha.
But I was still involved with the Groundlings because I would still call because, like I said, I had passed level 3. So now I'm waiting for level 4. And level 4 is the big deal because that's where you're performing 2 shows. You're training and writing to do 2 shows for an invited audience where you get a few tickets you get to give away. The rest of the audience is Groundlings alum. So that means Saturday Night Live people are there, Cracked TV at that time, or right. Mad TV, not Cracked
Mad TV.
Right. Cracked would love me to say that, but so
there's not many people that know what Cracked is.
Right. Well, now it's an online presence that's nothing like the magazine that it used to be. Now,
really?
It's hilarious. You go there, but it's all about lists and funny things like that. It's not a magazine anymore.
Cracked was the redheaded stepchild of what was the other Mad Magazine?
No, it was a direct ripoff of Mad Magazine.
Exactly.
So, So anyway, so I was just waiting, for that call, and I finally got that call in December of 2003. They're like, okay, you can finally go to level 4. So think about that. It was like February of 2001.
Right.
And now it's been like almost 3 years since I've performed in that manner. And I'm like, all right, here we go. But at that point, I did have a decision to make. I was like, I can quit my job and move back to LA, or I can try to do it all. And I tried to do it all. And, in retrospect, I think I always kind of looked at that as like, I don't know how it would have worked out. But I was also like, again, I was like, I don't have a job to go to in LA.
Right.
And I can try to do this, So yeah, it didn't finish the way I wanted to. I ended up doing 2 good shows. They weren't as good as I really think they could have been. But I got to hobnob with some SNL people and hang out with people that I admired, like Jennifer Coolidge, the MILF, the original MILF from American Pie. I remember she was a Groundling alum. So after my first show for Level 4, like I'm running backstage after saying hi to my friends and everybody who came to see me, and she's talking to the instructor because they're old friends, and she's like, "Oh, hey, great show," and I like, "Oh, thanks," and I kept running because you get used to that in LA, talking to people.
Sure.
And then they stopped me there. I'm like, "No, Trevor, great show." I was like, "Oh, well, thanks." And that was my first show. And then later on at the after party, I remember, I'm talking to friends, and I go up to the bar to order a scotch or something, and she's sitting there drinking something, and as I'm like waiting for my drink, I like look at her, like, "What are you drinking?" She's like, "A mojito." And "What's a mojito?" Right? She's like, "Oh, it's rum, this, blah blah." She's like, "You want some?" I was like, "Sure." So I end up drinking her drink, like we're sharing a drink, and she's telling me about her experience at the Groundlings and what it was like, and how her boyfriend at the time was Chris Kattan, who of course went on to SNL. And she said that Chris Kattan, she said, the most fun you'll ever have at the Groundlings is in the Sunday company, because by the time you get to the main company, you've kind of just exhausted yourself for ideas. And she said what happened with Chris was he started watching, his dad had a very rare, unique collection of old Buster Keaton films, and I mean actual film.
Whoa.
So he would watch old Buster Keaton films and basically steal bits. She goes, "That's just kind of what you start to do, It's something. It's like, what can I look at? What can I do?" I was like fascinated by that. But aside from being fascinated by that, I was like, "So you think Sunday company will be my best time there? You think I'm going to make it?" But it was a neat experience. But yeah, it didn't finish the way I thought it would. But
Okay, so that kind of peters out, and you come back and start doing the PM thing with.
Actually, I was already working for Americom.
That's right.
When I moved back in 2001, my whole plan, like I said, was to keep my agent in LA and go back to school at NMSU and finish my theater degree, so I could at least, become a university teacher for theater.
Okay.
And so then I can keep writing and everything, and then get my auditions and go. But so it must have been November that I moved back, and then in December, after me leeching off grandma again and my parents for a few weeks, Justin ends up getting a job in California, and Grandma Glass tells him, "You're going to take Trevor with you." Okay. And so I'm like, "All right, well, I'll go out there for a few weeks. I'll be back in California. That'll be cool." And the most unexpected thing happened. I ended up loving being out there with Justin. And we weren't ever distant with each other, but we weren't exactly close. But being there with him in China Lake is where we ended up, out by Ridgecrest, California.
Right.
Gateway to Death Valley. And so we ended up out there working together. And we became close, and then it turned into a longer gig. It was only supposed to be a 30-day job out there, and it ended up becoming like a 3 or 4 year job contract. And so, I was like, yeah, I could stay doing this. I don't need to go back to college. And then actually I would go back every now and then on weekends to LA, and I since I was still involved with the Groundlings, I could do a lab on a Sunday or something, so keep up my improv chops and everything. So that's how all that worked out,
And similar story in the PM market, because you were a PM, project manager, and I had a neighbor, a buddy, that said, "Hey, I need somebody to do about 8-10 hours of project management work for me. Can you give it a try?" And the curse of being good at your job in the project management field is that quickly turns into 100 hours a week.
Yeah.
Almost instantly. And I had a couple other things going, and the same kind of deal. It just kept, oh, well, why don't you take on this project, or why don't you go do a site visit, and. So I know exactly.
The line I always used that I always told everybody was, I got addicted to paying my bills. I was like, hey, I got a steady paycheck, and I'm like, this is wild. I don't have to work late into the night or whatever.
And I got
waiting
100 left
table.
over.
Yeah, well, maybe. Come on.
Yeah,
but because what I didn't spend on bills, I spent on beer. But it was. But it was a good time. We had a great time together. So it ended up that's what. All right, I can write wherever I am, and I can get my performance bug out some way. So,
well, let's jump forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Another area that I'm fascinated in is how people get on a television show.
Okay.
You sent me a message, hey, I'm going to be on House Hunters,
Yeah.
and we looked for it, and I watched it, and it was great.
Right.
Well, since then, I've had multiple neighbors on American Ninja, on The Great Race,
Mm-hmm.
where they disappeared for 2 months or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And long story there, I won't go into it. And now one of them runs goat yoga in Arizona, and,
Nice.
and we're going to be sitting down to talk here soon. But
Real quick, American Ninja Warrior Matt Eisenman was a buddy of mine from Level 4 at the Groundlings.
that's right. You told me that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. Great how that all comes together. But yeah, they go to all those, and they end up just applying for shows.
Uh-huh.
And once you're kind of in those and get a little popularity, she's known as the goat yoga girl now, and she's every American Ninja invited. She's in the background.
That's great.
She participated on 2 shows, and then next thing you know, they say, hey, why don't you grab your friend that works the yoga with you, and you're both outgoing, and you both were on American Ninja.
Yeah.
We'll put you in a Great Race.
Yeah.
And
That is cool.
I just find people that once they kind of crack the seal somehow,
Mm-hmm.
they keep getting that call back. Does that sound right? Or
Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. For us, how we ended up on House Hunters, it was funny. My nephew and his wife were on House Hunters when they lived in Fort Worth, and I was blown away by that. My nephew's wife, though, she tried to get on a lot of reality-based competition shows or different shows like that she liked. So she was the one who would always send in applications. So what happened, how they got on, because I asked, how'd you get that? How'd you swing that deal? She said, oh, their whole thing is they're looking for like couples that are looking at something maybe different or unique. And what made us unique was we didn't want an open concept home. We wanted a home with defined rooms. So we had a very strong opinion about that. Parker, especially, my nephew, her husband. I was like, oh, and that's also when I found out the whole secret of House Hunters, which isn't so much secret anymore. The couple has already bought the home, by the time they're filming.
that makes sense, because when you're watching the show, you're like, how's this happen so quick?
Yeah,
and
you're only looking at 3 houses.
And they do, they do pretty good job. But once in a while, you can detect season changes or now a different haircut or something like that.
Yes, you can. You definitely can. You can, like, one day it's sunny and another it's snowy. And another dead giveaway is if there's furniture in the house, that's not the house they pick because they want the house empty. Okay. So anyway, the producers loved them. And so they said, hey, if you ever move or anything, we'd love to have you on the show again. So they moved to Las Cruces a few years later, and they called them up and said, hey, we're going to move. They're like, great, we'll do it. And so the day before they were supposed to start filming, something happened with the exchange of the home. The seller asked for another day, or it got delayed a day or two. Well, they were supposed to film. So now my nephew and his wife are no longer the owners of the home. They're still buying the home, and the seller is the owner of the home on the day that they're supposed to start filming. And the seller will not agree to let them film. And for whatever reasons, and this show is filmed on a tight schedule. And I mean, the the director had already landed. In fact, he had just checked in to his room at the hotel here in Las Cruces. And, you know, they're trying to work with the seller. They're like, you know, it's, you know, just, we just want to film. Nothing bad is going on or whatever. We just need to film.
No matter
in your
what?
home.
Did they offer money? They
did. They offered money. They didn't offer a lot. They can't.
Right.
But for whatever reason, the seller was like, no, absolutely not. I will not agree to this. And they're like, okay, shut it down. So they shut down that show. They canceled it. They called the director, who was in his hotel room unpacking his bags. They're like, it's off. So their agent was our agent, because at the same time my wife and I were looking for a home.
Okay.
And so we were like a few days later, after the whole thing fell apart, you know, we're driving around looking at homes, and I said, are you bummed that you didn't get to be on the show? He's like, yeah, a little bit. But, you know, I talked to the producers, and they gave them my card, and they said, hey, if you ever want to film it, or if you ever want to do this, you have anybody who wants to do it, we'd love to do it, because we've never filmed an episode in New Mexico. So my wife and I are like, we'll do it.
Sure.
So they're like, okay. So actually, you know, so we looked at our first house on a Friday, and the very first house we looked at was the one I wanted to look at, and that ended up being the one that we put an offer in on the following Tuesday, right? So, you know, once we made the offer, she had already called the producers and said, you know, this couple would like to do it. They're like, all right, have them send in an application. So we did. And knowing that we needed to have some unique angle, like they wanted to find rooms, I decided my angle, my make or break, was I needed a coat closet.
And I love that. That stood out, jumped out, and was funny as hell.
Yep. So we sent in our initial application, and I wrote out very emphatically how much I required a coat closet. It's like, it's not very cold in New Mexico, but when it is, I want to know where my coat is. So they loved the application. They said, okay, now we need you guys to film yourself just for like a couple of minutes talking about yourself, and then like for a few minutes walking around where you live now. Like basically recreate a House Hunters episode. That proved to be amazingly difficult. Our first take was 15 minutes. The whole thing was supposed to be 5 minutes all told. And it was just 15 minutes of us blathering on, you know. And so we finally whittled it down after a few takes. And then we did a thing where we're like walking around where we lived. And we did love where we lived, but I'm walking around. I was like, all right, so this is the entryway. It's very cool, but as you can see right here, we have a coat rack. And why do we have a coat rack? Because there is no coat closet. And then I walk up, because at this point, of course, we've already bought our house, so we know what we're getting. And I go, and we have this lovely fireplace that I love, but here's the thing. You got to turn the gas on over here, and then you got to light it. I want a switch where all I got to do is like turn it on, and there you go.
You were playing it up.
I was playing it up. And so we talked with the producers a couple of times, and they're like, all right, we'll do it. When are you guys going to close? Well, they're looking at this date. They're like, if you can push it back to this date, or for some reason, no. They said, okay, we'll come and film at this date, but we don't want you to move in. We don't want any furniture in the house, because your house is going to be the first one that we film. So there can't be any furniture. So I was like, all right, well, then why am I going to close that early and have that much extra and interest pennies or whatever?
Right.
But I'm like, we might as well close it on this date. So yeah, we closed finally, I think, on a Thursday. And Justin and everybody came over to the house. We had like a 30-pack of beer, and we're just hanging out and having a little party in this empty house that we just bought.
Sure.
It was great. And then the next day, the producer shows up, and the director, not the producer. And so we filmed the owner of our townhome we were renting. She wouldn't agree to let us film there. I guess she thought we were going to dog on it. We're like, no, we're not going to dog on it. We love it, but she wouldn't agree. And they're like, we'll pay you a little bit of money. No. I'm like, all right. Because my whole thing is, who wouldn't want their stuff on this show, So my friends, they agreed to let us film at their place, their townhome. So we our first filming day, we acted like we lived at this house, and in some great footage they have.
Oh, you're breaking my heart. The whole show's a farce.
The whole show's a farce. they had me make a fire just so I could reiterate more about my need for an automatic fireplace.
Nice.
But I mean, I killed it lighting that fire. Even the cameraman, he's like, I was impressed how quickly you lit that fire. I was like, I'm a pro. I just don't want to have to do it, man. So yeah. So I'll tell you the weirdest thing. I've had a lot of theatrical experience. I've done improv. I've done a lot of things, but the weirdest thing I've ever done, performance-wise, is acting like myself.
Okay.
It's a very weird feeling. It's like, what am I supposed to do right now? Like, Ricky Bobby, I don't know what to do with my hands. It's like, I'm not playing a character, and yet I am playing a character. I'm playing some imagined version of myself on camera. And it was only
That's fascinating.
It's only really the first day that was in play.
Okay.
Because then you ease into it. After the first little bits where you're sitting down doing the interview, like, this is what I want, which takes forever, by the way. I mean, they whittle it down to like 20 or 30 seconds. That takes like an hour or two.
Sure.
And because the director is just sitting there looking at his iPad, he's like, and he's apologizing the whole time. He's like, I'm sorry, I have to ask all these questions. They want me to ask all these questions so they can get something. I was like, okay. And so he's just going through over and over again. And one of the bits too that they wanted to do, they had already set up that they were going to have me showing my wife, Chris, how to hit a golf ball. Because they wanted to film at a golf course, which was beautiful, a beautiful location. But I was like, she doesn't golf.
How random is that?
And I am a terrible golfer, so I felt like a complete fraud with that. But so it didn't make it on the show.
Wait. So filming at your friend's condo doesn't make you feel like a fraud?
No, not that. Not that at all. Because I've lived in condos.
Oh, okay.
I've never tried to really teach my wife how to play golf.
All right. I'm with you.
Well, the fraud part was really because they're like, what do you like to do around town? And everybody, we like to hike. We like to do this. We like to bicycle, walk, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like motioning, like with a, like swinging a golf. I love to play golf. We love to play golf together. We go there a lot.
Boy.
She's not so much on the golfing, but she enjoys riding in the cart, so they're definitely, it's a mixture of reality, but they're also having to tell a story. I will say this, of the other two houses that we walked through on the show, one of them we legitimately did look at in real life. And in fact, it was a house that I told Chris, I was like, if we can't get this house that I really love, I want to go for this house.
Okay.
And so when we were looking at it, there was an element of truth in that. What was funny, though, was the way they had it set up. They had it set up that they're like telling my wife, they're like, all right, Chris, we're going to make it so that you're the one who's willing to stretch the budget, and Trevor's going to be hard about it, which was completely flip-flopped. I'm the one who was always like, we can afford more. We can do this. But in real life, it was.
Why do you think they'd push you in that direction to flip it?
I think because ultimately the house that we got looked so much like what I was describing that they wanted to have something that Chris really loved, and yet I'm pushing hard against the budget and saying there's no way we can do it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So I really think that had a lot to do with it. But it was a great experience. It was a lot of fun, and you get sent a DVD of it, but it's like a clip track DVD, so it's all one continuous thing. You can't skip to anything, and where the commercial breaks are supposed to be, then all of a sudden these color bars show up, right? So it's a very utilitarian thing, but it was a neat experience, one that as the kids grow older, we can always show them the video of it.
They don't make you sign an NDA or don't give away secrets?
No. Well, maybe they do, but at this point, everybody knows their secrets. Really, the one thing that stood out from the paperwork we signed was they own your likeness for that episode in perpetuity throughout the universe. It actually says throughout the universe.
Wow.
We can't ever say, no, you can't use us in a commercial or anything like that. I would be thrilled if they used me in a commercial.
Right.
I would love that.
Right.
So
fantastic.
And they aired my episode a lot. They, so it originally aired the week of the World Series in 2014, and I think the last airing that I saw it came on was 2017. So,
well, I'm not looking for figures, but do you get paid every time it airs? You get a residual?
No, what you get, you don't, your payment is, how did they refer it? I think an endowment or something.
Right.
$500.
Not in perpetuity.
No, like $500.
Interesting.
A $500 gift for doing the show.
Understood. Well, we're going to try to wrap this up. I don't want to go too far. We'll just keep going and going all night because I just love talking to you.
Yeah. I will say, I want to circle back just real quickly because I think the biggest person to hit from my Groundlings days, and I knew he would because I had him in level 2 and level 4, is Mikey Day. And he's on Saturday Night Live right now.
Really?
And I mean, the guy in level 2, he was funny, but he was really young. In level 4, he was otherworldly. It was like, oh man, when he showed, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. And even then, though, it still took him, I think, another 9 years after that. He was on a lot of different shows that, like made for TV movies. He was on Nick Cannon's Wild and Out. He was on a show called Kath and Kim that was on NBC and failed in the first year. He did a lot of things, and then he finally made it to SNL. And that was the one guy that I looked at. I was like, this guy is going to make it to SNL, like of anybody I ever saw in my life besides me. And he did it, but it still took him a lot of time and a lot of work. So that's the big trick in LA. There's no like sudden switch where you've suddenly made it. It's like you pop up here and there, here and there, here and there, and then suddenly you're out there.
Something gets popular for whatever reason, and then you just ride that wave.
Yeah, and he made it in because Taron Gilliam, I think that's his name. I'm massacring that name right now, but he was on SNL and he was in a show that Mikey wrote when he was in college, and I think they were just longtime friends. And it's one of those things like if I saw Mikey today, he might recognize me, he might know me, like we're friends on Facebook, but it's like at this point in his life he's had so many experiences and done so many things. It's not a mean thing. You just can't help but kind of forget people along the way. It's like seeing somebody from high school or junior high. It's like there's a flint of recognition.
Your brain only has so many files.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can only fill it up with so much stuff. At some point, you got to purge a little and get rid of it.
But the one thing that I'll say about that is that I didn't expect is how it would make me feel seeing somebody I knew that I always thought would make it, and yet it's hard.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I was there too. I did the work. I put it in.
Yeah.
And there's always that.
It's like you're happy for them and everything. It's like, but it's hard to see it sometimes. Jealousy, maybe.
Well, absolutely. It's part of human nature. And what I will tell you, my friend, is you're in a good place.
Oh yeah, yeah.
2 beautiful children.
Oh, and that's why I can't say I really regret anything.
Exactly. I can see the twinge, but things happen for a reason. I had plenty of opportunities in my lifetime, and I would not have my 2 beautiful children and my wife and where I live. It's just the way it works out.
Right.
There is no right or wrong.
Right, exactly.
Well, with that, why don't we wrap it up?
Sure.
Say thank you for being my first guest. Hopefully this goes somewhere.
Yeah. Good luck cutting this episode together, man.
Yeah, no problem. Take care of it.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.